On page 282 and 283 of our CWW, there's a helpful exercise that I'm going to offer to you to help you get started on working toward a thesis statement. As you know, the thesis statement should be a part of the introduction of the paper, often in the first paragraph, most often in the first paragraph, although it can drop into the second if you really see the introduction of the paper to be 2 paragraphs. But the exercise to try on 282 involves taking first a list of fill in the blanks about what do I think about the subject that you're going to try and write about. So the first sentence there says, what makes such and such, and that would be your topic, good or bad, is, and that you would then write what your assessment of why you want to look at that topic is. And then for a little bit further down, it says, I expect the topic to be what? And you can list in what you're expecting to find in your sources. Then you can see if that ends up bearing out to be true or not. And then once you've done that on 283, then you can start a little similar fill in the blank on what do you think your readers think, because being aware of where you think they're going to be can then help you decide how you're going to present your writing. So again, thinking about your audience as core student and faculty, you can assume that they are there to learn about the issue that you're presenting and decide what they think about it themselves. So that's at the top of 283. And you can think then about what criterion or standards of judgment do you want your readers to use when evaluating your paper. And this is something then that you can also consider as you write your introduction. Then the next few pages after that will talk to you about a strategy for getting a good thesis statement. And this starts on the bottom of 283. But make sure that your thesis statement announces your subject and makes your overall judgment clear. So your position on the relationship between King and the current event is clear. And state whether this is something that you think is a good thing, that this is a positive thing that you're bringing to the essay, or if it's a negative thing. Remember that your own evaluation can be mixed. You can say that this aspect of King's letter works and this aspect doesn't, for instance, but you always want to start from the place of the comparison of the two. So after you've done that, then you want to develop your argument. And as you develop your argument, you may want to rework your thesis so that you can make it more compelling as you go along. And you can do this by the way that you work with your sources. If you find that your source on the current event moves toward one particular aspect of what King describes, then you can bring that up. Then as you work through that, you want to start introducing counter arguments, ideas that others might have that would oppose your idea, and bring them in and show and then return to your own. So the things you can use then to support your argument are certainly your two sources, and you can quote from the sources if you want. As I mentioned, you can have a photograph if you want. You can bring in statistics if that would support what you're saying, and or examples. So think about different ways so that the paper isn't all the same kind of argument, but see how much you can vary it up yourself. Then once you have presented both your argument and significant counter arguments, then you can start to evaluate and see that what you present is a strong case, and that will then take you to your conclusion. It's also good to, if you can imagine that someone would object to something that you're writing, to present your defense of that objection ahead of time so that it can't be carried through. It's also a good idea to indicate the credibility of your sources in the paper. So for instance, we talked about, for instance, in the library session, the New York Times as a credible, reliable news source, and that you would want to demonstrate by quoting from that article and then also mentioning the articles itself, its credibility.